Hello and welcome back to another video. I've had a lot of people ask me to make a video on my thoughts about World of Warcraft Legion, and I just wanted to wait until Blizzcon was over so I knew a few more details and was able to collect my thoughts. So first up, let's talk about the theme. Before the expansion was even announced, I was hoping for something that involved the Lost Isles. However, I didn't expect it to have so many different elements of story. We've got the Legion invasion, Queen Azshara, Old God influence, and the Emerald Dream all in one expansion. I think this is pretty cool as it gives a lot of diversity in terms of theme. I know a lot of people are worried that it might be a bit of a clusterfuck in terms of story, but I'm not really too worried about that. I guess the only thing I could say is that a lot of these parts of the story could have been their own separate expansion, and with them all being a part of Legion, this maybe limits Blizzard's options in terms of future expansions. But overall, the theme of the expansion really excites me. At least it's not going to be an orc fest like the previous two expansions. Artifact weapons are one of the biggest new features added to Legion, and it seems like they add a decent amount of character progression past level cap through their own talent system. I personally love and hate this feature for a number of reasons. I love it because the weapons look amazing and have plenty of skins that can be collected, as well as colour variations that you can match with your transmogs. This will give me something to do outside of endgame group content, and I like the artifact progression system for the same reason, as you can choose how you want to earn artifact power, which will mean it's something you'll passively progress whilst doing the things you'd normally do. The main thing that concerns me with this is what will happen to them for the next expansion. At the Blizzcon during the Q&A, the devs said they weren't too sure but are leaning more to artifacts just being a Legion thing and them hanging above your mantelpiece as an ornament next expansion. To me, this doesn't really make much sense. Why would we swap out the best weapons in the game lore-wise for something else next expansion? I hope they can find a way for this to make sense. For PvP, they announced the new honour system that will essentially be a way to balance PvP and PvE separately through PvP specific talents. This is a great feature that I've wanted to be added to the game for so long. Outside of that, you can also prestige similar to in Call of Duty and earn ranks, artifact skins and mounts. As someone that likes to spam battlegrounds at a casual level, I'm glad they've finally given me something to work towards, and this should give more people a reason to do battlegrounds, thus shortening queue times in the process. Something I am disappointed with about PvP though is they said in the Q&A there will be no new battlegrounds for launch. Are you fucking kidding me? We have been years without a new BG, and to me it doesn't feel like a new expansion without some new battlegrounds. We are getting one or two new arenas though apparently, and Helenka said we might get some new BGs in later patches. I think once PvPers have gotten over the initial hype for the new honour system, they're gonna feel kinda left out by Blizzard in terms of new content. For PvE, we're going to be following a similar system to Warlords with two raids in the first tier, the first being a 7 boss and the second being a 10 boss. I thought the raiding in Warlords was really good, so I'm happy to see them continue with this model. In the Q&A they also mentioned they think it could be a good idea splitting the huge 12 to 14 boss raids into two separate raids with different aesthetics. I quite like this idea, but was kind of hoping to see a few single boss raids similar to what we got in Wrath. Blizzard have said they want to make dungeons more relevant throughout Legion, and I'm happy to see them add 10 new dungeons, which is 2 more than Warlords, although I'd still like to see them add more in upcoming patches. By far the best thing about PvE though, which they've announced, was the revamp of challenge modes. Now once per week you'll get a keystone which will scale up the difficulty of your dungeons based on how good you are as a player, giving you appropriate item level gear for higher difficulties. This basically means no matter how good you are, dungeons will always be relevant, and you'll be rewarded for doing them. They also said there's going to be some other fun things such as exploding corpses, constant dot damage, and increased damage below 30% to make it even harder. I'm happy to see dungeons finally get some love again. In terms of leveling, there will be 4 new leveling zones in Legion, which isn't enough for me personally. However, you can do them in whichever order you like as they scale based on your level. I really like this, but I'm not as hyped for this feature as most people, as there's so many other MMOs that I've played that have been doing the exact same thing for years. It's nice to see WoW finally catching up with this though, but I'd like to see them roll this out to some of the old world zones too. I'm also really looking forward to the quest line each spec will need to go through for their artifact weapon when leveling. I really hope each of these are unique, as it will give a decent amount of replayability to the leveling experience of Legion. In terms of world content, it seems like we have a new system of objectives which will appear on the map and last a certain duration of time, giving various rewards such as artifact power. Some events are more rewarding than others and will last for a longer duration. This kinda reminds me of the Guild Wars 2 system, where you'll be able to look at the map at all the objectives in a zone and choose which ones you want to do. Some are said to be PvP objectives and others are world bosses which will last much longer. I personally really like the idea of this kind of world content, as it seems to focus on giving players a lot more freedom in their choices and is a much better system to your typical dailies. I just hope they make a crazy amount of variation in these objectives so they don't feel repetitive. Class order halls are basically a location which only your class has access to. Here you can upgrade your artifact, accept some quests, take part in a few class mini-games and access some class-specific bonus features, such as the transportation system for druids and hunters. I'm not overly hyped for the class order halls personally, but I don't have any objections to them either. I do love how Blizzard seem to be focusing more on class identity this expansion, which is something I've wanted to see a lot more of previously. The new Transmog system in Legion is one of my favourite things they've announced. Basically, every piece of armour you collect and bind to your character will be saved permanently to your wardrobe. You can then get rid of that item and not have to store it anywhere. Blizzard will also go back and look at every quest you've ever completed on your characters and unlock all of the armour pieces for those quests, even the ones you didn't choose. I love this. My bank and void storage are almost totally full on all of my characters, so now I can finally have all of that space back. Not only that, but they're adding 3 more transmoggable slots in the form of tabards, enchants and shirts. Oh yeah, each one of these are also saved to your wardrobe too, so no need to store tabards in your bank now either. Finally, they said you can now choose not to display your shoulders, similar to your helm and cloak, as well as a new wardrobe UI feature that will show you how many armor pieces you've collected, and show you the pieces that you haven't collected and where to find them. I honestly love everything they've announced to do with Transmog, and it seems like Blizzard want to give us more things to collect, which is something that appeals to me greatly. Trispec is a feature I've wanted to be added to WoW for years, and we're finally getting it in Legion. As someone that loves to play many classes and specs, I've always hated how tedious it was to play all 3 of your classes' specs. Druids will also be getting quad specs, so now we no longer have to go through the hassle of rearranging our action bars again. I'm so glad they've finally added this to the game. So loot in Legion's a bit of a weird one. Apparently any item in Legion can essentially scale up to be really high in item level. It's like the Warforged system on steroids. The devs assured us that the best way to gear up will still be through running raids, but it seems like they're adding an insane amount of RNG into the game, essentially extending the gear treadmill. There's also going to be random legendaries that will have a small chance of dropping and will significantly change how your rotation works. The devs said they want legendaries to feel like the epics that dropped in the world back in vanilla. I'm not too sure how I feel about this system. I've never been a fan of RNG, and whilst it could be exciting having one of these items drop, it could also result in the ramping up of item level requirements for groups and almost being mandatory to have them, which worries me. But of course there's bound to be a lot of iteration with this system, and it might not even make it into the game. Demon Hunters are the new class being added to the game in Legion, and from what I've seen of them so far, I'm excited to try them out. They seem to be a really mobile and fast-paced class with some awesome animations, something that really appeals to my playstyle. Not only that, but the whole fantasy of the class is something I find really cool. Demon Hunters will only have 2 specs, which is something I like as it will mean more flavour for those specs. Havoc is the DPS spec, in which you'll gain a resource similar to Rage and spend it on big damage abilities, and Vengeance is the tanking spec, which is still being fleshed out, so we don't know how that will work. The coolest thing about Demon Hunters for me is how they can double jump, glide and boost through the air. Finally, they also start at level 98 and have a lot more customization than any other class, with tattoos, blindfolds and horns. Again, this is another nice feature. In terms of other class changes, I love that Survival Hunters will be a melee spec. Finally, Hunters will be a class that will have a lot more flavour, and I've wanted a Hunter revamp for a long time because currently all 3 specs feel the same. The Combat Rogue spec will be renamed to Outlaw. I'm not too sure how I feel about this because I quite enjoyed playing combat, and this kind of hints to an overhaul, but regardless it will be worth checking out. Demonology Warlocks are getting a rework to control demons instead of turning into them. Lore-wise, this makes sense, especially with Demon Hunters getting Metamorphosis, but we'll have to wait and see how they play before making any judgment. Moonkins and Guardian Druids are also getting updated models, about fucking time. And in general, the devs seem to want to get rid of pointless resource systems and charges to make certain specs more fun, such as the Shadow Priest getting Insanity, Death Knights only having one type of rune, and the removal of Arcane Mage's charges. I'm on board with these changes, and I'll be excited to see how they play out when I get into the beta. Finally, in Legion, the profession system is going to be getting some love through various profession-specific quest lines to learn recipes, and an overhaul of the UI which will now display a lot more information and tell you which recipes you haven't learnt and where to go in order to get them. Again, this is another nice feature that seems to add a lot more to the fantasy of being a professional in WoW. Inscription will be taking a huge hit with minor glyphs just being removed from the game entirely. I'm actually pleased about this because on low pop servers the best glyphs were never on the auction house, which was always a huge pain. Minor glyphs will however be expanded on much more, allowing you to have one minor glyph for each ability. How cool is that? At Blizzcon we got to see the full trailer for the Warcraft movie, which comes out June 2016. I'm ridiculously excited for this and the trailer's got me really hyped. I honestly don't think I've ever been this excited for a movie before. Another thing we got to see at Blizzcon, which I actually wasn't expecting, was the Legion cinematic. As usual, the cinematics team did a fantastic job, and for about a minute I was convinced we were about to see King Varian die. I also loved that we got to see Sylvanas too, as she's one of my favourite characters in the game. Overall, I am looking forward to Legion, but I'm not going to jump on the hype train just yet until we see that everything that's been announced has made it into the game. Lots of people are talking about resubbing to WoW right now, but guys, just remember, Legion won't be out for another 9 or 10 months, and currently, we are still in Warlords. Don't resub now because you'll just be disappointed. I'm still cautiously optimistic about this expansion, and despite being happy with a lot of the features they're adding except a few, that could all mean nothing if they don't continue to support the expansion with plenty of content past the launch. Legion has a lot of changes that will be good for the game overall, but it still has the potential to be Warlords 2.0, so be careful of the hype train. Saying that, I do hope this expansion is the one where Blizzard redeem themselves and finally give us a good expansion. From what they've announced, they do seem to be heading in the right direction though. So that's it for this video guys, please let me know your thoughts on WoW Legion so far and tell me if you'll be resubbing in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed the video, you take it easy and I'll see you again really soon. We're going to run, we're going to eat, blink, we should be able to finish him here, if not I'm fucked. Fuck this dude, fuck this. Oh my god, I'm fucked, I am so fucked. 6 seconds on this block.